Last year, Interplay and Zatrix Entertainment introduced cyber hacker Zack in Cyberia, a combination adventure game and shooter. Zack was railroaded into a spy mission by the ultra-authoritarian FWA. In the heart of the Siberian wasteland, he made his way to a secret laboratory where nanotechnology experiments had gone out of control. By the end of the game, Zack had merged with the microscopic machines to become the Siberian being who was last seen plummeting to Earth. This kind of violent ending might explain why the upcoming Cyberia 2 is subtitled Resurrection. Yes, Zack is back, but he's not the man he once was. We talked to producer Joan Wood about the mysterious ending of Cyberia and what it has led to.
The last shot of the game was him falling to Earth as this being, Siberian being. And over the credits, there was an audio set up for the next game, which was helicopters coming in and a strange Dr. Corbin rescuing Zack out of the mountains where he crashed. So he's actually been used for experiments. They scraped all this nanotechnology off of him and put him in cold storage and did more experiments with this nano stuff. So he's been asleep for 3 years in cryonic storage, and he wakes up and is weak and tired and disoriented and looks a little different. That's where the story starts, is him being rescued by a rebel leader. And she's kind of a tough girl. She's an FWA major in the Air Force who has really sort of seen up close what the bad guys are doing and has decided to be a rebel leader, and so she is leading the fight to stop them. A little bit of antagonism between the two at the beginning, but they eventually come to respect each other and pull each other out of some pretty dicey situations.
The designers at Zatrix weren't foolish enough to fix what ain't broke, so much of the feel and environment of Cyberia 2 will be very familiar to players who enjoyed the original game.
There's a lot of new environments, and in fact everything is new, but it's the same world that Zack inhabited before. I think the main thing was the balance between arcade-type sequences and exploration-type sequences and puzzles, and having enough movie and story to hold the whole thing together. And we're definitely continuing along that same line and just sort of enhancing and elaborating on every aspect of it. For each of the type of elements we had before, there's something that's more elaborate, whereas last year, when you were controlling Zack as a foreground sprite, you had still backgrounds, and he was very small, walking around from node to node. Now we have moving cameras everywhere. So the camera is following Zack, and he has a very, very large foreground sprite that the player is controlling lateral movement and jumping and ducking and firing. And you get a much better, for gamers, a much better POV for shooting and targeting and actually performing tasks. It's sort of an over-the-shoulder, following him around view.
Character movement in Cyberia 2 will also be much more naturalistic than in the first installment, thanks to extensive motion capture technology.
We have our own motion capture system in-house, and we do all of our own motion capture data, processing, animating. Last year, almost the whole game was keyframed and inverse kinematics, if you're familiar with what those are. That gives the models very sort of wooden movements. The motion capture it's captured off a person, and so there's all these subtle nuances of every joint moving, and it really looks like a person moving. And this motion capture is applied to the main characters, but it's also applied to people just standing around in the background, and it gives a feel of realism that you really just aren't used to in CG. I think that's the technical side of that was very, very challenging, but the payoff is great.
One of the few complaints IE had about the original Cyberia was the repetition and predictability of the combat sequences. Once again, Zatrix seems to have it covered.
What we've done is very much enhanced the number of enemies that can be displayed and the randomness of those enemies, so that whether you're driving in a car or you're flying in a plane, the replay factor is much greater. There's groups of enemies and families of enemies that come randomly, and that makes it much more challenging. You can't just fly through it and memorize it. You have to actually respond to what happens on screen and play it pretty much shooting from the hip.
While Cyberia wasn't flawless, it was nonetheless a very strong game that demonstrated the strong design talents of the Xatrix crew. The 2 CD-ROM Cyberia 2 will take that philosophy to the next level.
I think what I would like is to create games that appeal to a really wide audience, where the hardcore gamers have enough thumb twitching in it, and the people that really want to sort of sit and watch an interactive movie and move once in a while are still satisfied and not frustrated, and to bring a really great looking, sounding experience to their computer.